Hi, everyone, and welcome to Heal Endometriosis Naturally with Wendy K Laidlaw. Wendy has spent the last 2 years helping women with various stages of endometriosis to heal naturally after putting her condition into remission. After her own healing success from stage 4 endometriosis and adenomyosis, she's inspired to heal others, and her goal is to help some of the 175 million women know that there is another way other than painkillers, drugs, or surgery. This is the place to be for real talk with real people for real results, so you can learn how to heal your endometriosis naturally. Please note that the opinions expressed in this program may represent options, but are not a substitute for proper medical care. Before starting any new healthcare program, we recommend you consult with a health professional.
Hey everyone, it's Wendy K Laidlaw here from Heal Endometriosis Naturally. And as always, I hope that this message finds you well. This week, I'm going to be talking about susceptibility of vulnerability. And the reason that the kind of vulnerability element has kind of shown up is there's just so many mixed messages, and I believe challenging and incorrect messages about the concept of vulnerability. There's some very well-known people advocating that vulnerability is a wonderful quality and a wonderful way of being in relationships. And of course, vulnerability in a safe relationship is of an equal measure and an absolutely kind of like a normal kind of interaction between people. But when vulnerability is touted as you should be a vulnerable person with all people, that's the element that really does bother me. As a woman, if you're listening to this, I'm assuming you have endometriosis. As you know, I put my endometriosis, adenomyosis, and many other conditions into remission. And it was one of those, I felt quite sad to recognize that being open and vulnerable in the way that society and all these people kind of who are out there touting it, saying, put me into some very toxic situations with some very poisonous people that caused me great personal harm, emotional harm, and even financial harm. So this is why I wanted to kind of talk about this today. The general kind of theme out there, and maybe more of the left, maybe the woo-woo side, perhaps you could say, is you've got to be open and vulnerable to everybody. You just have to open out your heart and let everybody in, and everybody's loving and safe and caring. Well, that's just not the animal kingdom. That's not the human kingdom, and the animal kingdom isn't like that either. The animal kingdom, there are predators and there's prey, and it's no different in our society. I think I kind of want to say that, as I say, if you're in a very safe, nurturing, loving relationship, chances are, you know, that person who's in that loving, nurturing relationship with you, you know, accepts you, builds you up, takes care of you in a way that you take care of them, not in a codependent sort of way, but there's this mutual respect, mutual love, mutual admiration. There is no criticism, there is no putting down, there is no gaslighting, there is no narcissism, there is no emotional abuse, psychological abuse, any type of abuse or mistreatment whatsoever. And if you are experiencing or have experienced that in any form of relationship, be it, you know, your caregivers, your parents, your partners, anything like that, being vulnerable with them is putting yourself more in danger, I would say, emotionally and spiritually. And the challenge I see with working with so many beautiful women, such beautiful souls, is they have been born, as I was, with this big heart, this big wanting to keep everybody happy, wanting to help everyone, wanting to connect. And I kind of went by the kind of societal kind of, oh, be open, be vulnerable, be kind to everybody because everybody's the same. And what I realized is not everybody's the same. There are shades of gray of people, isn't there? And I'm not saying there's good and there's bad, and you know, there's different shades of people. And the only person that can really decipher or discern whether somebody is worth considering being vulnerable with is yourself over a period of time. I think, again, I was like a overly excited Labrador puppy galloping towards new people that I didn't know and new relationships, etc., with a big open heart and big open arms. And was it any wonder then that I would be felt like I'd been kicked and I was howling because they turned out not to be what I thought they were, because they presented themselves in a different way. And kind of what I want to encourage you all is to allow yourself time to question. So if you're meeting somebody new, allow yourself that time to question, rather than being of the belief and the stories, I have to be really open and vulnerable to a complete stranger or somebody new. Give yourself, parent yourself, and allow yourself time to get to know that person. Allow yourself time for the other person to fully reveal themselves to you before you even consider being vulnerable, in inverted commas. This is the problem, is it's 180 degrees. It's turned itself on its head. It from my own experience and the experience of these beautiful women that I work with, the messaging is wrong, and the messaging is the messaging is incorrect for our overly developed society, where people can learn how to put masks on, are very good at manipulation, control. They're socially, they're very, very adept, and they're very well equipped to appear to be nice and kind, but actually in time, their real self reveals themselves. And you probably all, if you're listening to this, I'm sure you'll relate, where you thought somebody was one way or some type of person. It turned out that they were a completely different type of person to who you thought they were. And you're left reeling and left in shock. How could you have got it so wrong? And I think it's not that you got it wrong, it's just that you've been conditioned to be open and vulnerable, because that's what religion says, and that's what society says, and that's what our parents say, and that's what our school says. You got to be really open and vulnerable. I couldn't disagree with that more if I tried. So the purpose of this podcast today was just really to put it out there. I've over the past couple of days, I've seen different articles and I've heard different things, and it was irking me and really starting to gnaw away at me. And I just wanted to speak this through and voice it, so that to be that voice to say, take your time to get to know somebody. It could be a partner, it could be a friend, it could be a work colleague. If you go in there with that big open heart to a complete stranger, there's a high percentage chance that person is going to either use, abuse, or mistreat that openness. So allow yourself the opportunity to take your time. It's like they call it slow contact, slowly get to know somebody. Notice if you have a part that's really impatient or just feels like, oh, this is an amazing person. I have heard stories of people who invariably that are that charismatic, that charming devil that takes you straight to hell, just shows you one part of them. And invariably when you meet people, they present their very best self at the very beginning. They don't reveal all of themselves to you. So this is where protecting that vulnerability. And I view vulnerability as like a small innocent child. You see little children at 4 or 5 years old, and they're innocent. There's an innocence about them. And I sometimes see that in the beautiful woman I work with. There's this innocence. And our role as we keep ourselves healthy, emotionally, physically, spiritually, is to parent ourselves. You wouldn't allow a little 4 or 5 year old to go running up to a complete stranger and run into their arms. You would say, well, we don't know who that stranger is. Let's take some time to get to know them. Let's allow, some time to pass so that we can, really see what they're really like, to see whether or not they're trustworthy of your vulnerability. And I think that's kind of what I'm kind of getting at here. And equally, if you've been watching the news and social media, and I don't normally pay a lot of attention to this, but it's hard to ignore it. The Johnny Depp case and Amber Heard case has been very jarring as well, just watching certain types of people behave in certain ways that are just aggressive and confrontational, between the smirks and the smiling about abuse and things like that. So and invariably, my feeling is if you have this condition and it's shown up in your body, it's because you're a beautiful soul, you're a beautiful woman at heart, and you probably been around people that have mistreated you or not appreciated you or valued you in the way that you should. And you might find that there's parts of you that are really confused when you're like, but I was open and I was vulnerable and I did give all of myself and I did try to keep them happy. And what we need to learn on this journey is we're not wanting to get rid of those parts, but we need to protect those parts with, time and space, and going as slow as we possibly can into any new relationships, and even with our existing relationships. I remember reading years ago early on in my journey, just go galloping in and say to this person, this family member, how you feel and open yourself up and be vulnerable. And I did. And it was the worst thing I ever did. So what I'm trying to share here is, I'm assuming you're all journaling and you're listening to yourself and you're connecting to yourself and you're really hearing that inner wisdom, that inner voice. Because as I say to my clients, you're the only person ultimately that can protect yourself. And if you feel that at this moment you can't, it's because you need to kind of develop this internal parenting part that just, is the judicator, is the rational voice inside, that voice of wisdom, that if it feels that part of you wanting to gallop into a new relationship and open yourself up, just to slow that down a little bit, that the vulnerability call is outdated now. I mean, maybe 100 years ago, that was okay to do. But nowadays, there's some very well-equipped, very well-versed, and very highly social people who know how to turn on the charm, know how to socially present themselves in a way that makes you think that you can lower your guard and be vulnerable. And I guess you also want to explore in your journal, what does vulnerability even mean for you? Does that mean that you share all your deepest secrets? Does that that you share that, what makes you sad and what makes you upset? Again, there's a lot of misinformation out there about, even in relationships. If you're in what I call a toxic relationship, you're with someone who ignores you, gives you the silent treatment, is grumpy, bad-tempered, you're walking on eggshells, that is not a time to be open and vulnerable with that person. If they can acknowledge their behavior and they're prepared to do the work with a psychologist or a therapist to really address their mistreatment of you or their behavior, that's awesome. And then, even then, be slow with your vulnerability. The more that you open yourself up to someone who won't treat you with the tenderness that you deserve, or give you the compassion or the feedback you deserve, is just going to torture yourself even more. And that's where you can get knots in your stomach. That's where your intestines, that's where your instincts, remember your intestinal tract has as many brain cells as a cat. That's where you say, trust your gut and all that. That's where, again, do not underestimate how being open and vulnerable to people that are toxic is very damaging for your nervous system. And if your nervous system is in a constant state of anxiety or fight or flight, or you go into a freeze fold, then that's going to affect your immune system. So as I say, vulnerability, there's a lot of mixed messages. I'm sharing this with you today because it keeps coming up for me. The Johnny Depp trial and Amber Heard, you hear how he was very vulnerable with her. He shared a lot of his vulnerabilities with her, which I think a lot of us maybe do or have done in relationships out of pure innocence and feeling, well, that's how you connect with people. And that's how you do connect with people that are beautiful souls like yourself, who are really safe, who have earned your trust, who have demonstrated to you that they are trustworthy. So please just be mindful. I feel that concept's very outdated. As I say, there's some well-known people talk about it. I completely disagree in it, and I would happily have an open discussion about it for a number of different reasons. I've seen so many beautiful people be, hurt, wounded, mistreated, and even trying to be destroyed by those other people that talked about vulnerability and things as well. So just be very mindful of that. Always trust your instincts. Come back to your journaling. Do your relaxation meditations. Ask the question. If you're even asking if somebody can be trusted, that's some part of you knowing that person, is showing signs of perhaps, the elements of their character, their personality, that there's some orange flags. They might not even be red flags. They might just be orange flags, so that you just need to pay attention. And equally, please don't feel guilty if you notice that you're questioning the trustability or, whether or not this person is who they are. At the end of the day, as women, all we have is our instincts. That's what we're always tuning into. That's what our great grannies and grandmothers would have used. As I was telling one of my groups earlier today, way back in the 1600s, that's when a lot of women were put to the stake and burned, because if they used their instincts or intuition or their healing powers, they were classed as witches. Women were damned if they did and damned if they don't. That was in America and the UK. And what happened over the centuries is women have disowned and disassociated and detached from their own natural intuition and instincts. So if you are finding that you're suddenly questioning someone in a relationship, or you're questioning the behavior of parents or a partner or a work colleague or somebody or something, please do listen to that. You don't have to take any action unless, of course, you're in any physical danger. If you are in physical danger, then of course, remove yourself as quickly as possible. But allow yourself the opportunity at least to explore through your journaling, through the art of writing. And I always add this caveat: please do make sure that you keep your journal safe from any prying eyes and locked away. And if anybody does breach that privacy, then be very angry that they do so. That should be private to you. But use your journaling as an opportunity just to explore if something is irking away in the background. And it could be somebody close to you, or it could be a friend that suddenly you're seeing in a different light, and you're hearing all this I would say nonsense about vulnerability. Then please do listen to yourself. You don't have to take any action. You don't have to end the friendship or anything like that at this point. I just always encourage my women just to pay attention to their instincts. Being overly vulnerable with a complete stranger is, they used to have this thing at school called stranger danger, whereas the young kids were advised not to go running up to complete strangers because they didn't know who they were. The same applies as adults. We're all very intuitive. We have this energy that we give out. We care, but that has to be protected, and ultimately the only person that can protect us is ourselves. So that is the message for this week. Just be mindful that because again, there's so many women with endometriosis have beautiful big hearts, and then they get wounded, and then they contract and they pull back and they switch off and they disassociate, and they're so wounded by what's happened. But this is where on this journey you're learning just to kind of how to protect and preserve their more vulnerable parts, which are beautiful. But being overly vulnerable to complete strangers, or even people that are toxic, and you'll know the toxic people in your life and in your family, your aim is to protect yourself from them and wait until somebody has validated and demonstrated beyond a shadow of a doubt that they're safe to be vulnerable. And even then, take your time. Don't just offload everything to everybody and open yourself up and make you feel insecure and horribly vulnerable that you wish you hadn't. Make it an equal thing if you're going to be sharing with someone. But that is me for this week. As always, please do keep taking care of yourself, and of course, keep you number one. Until next week, take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Heal Endometriosis Naturally with Wendy K Laidlaw. And I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and rate us. If you're interested in learning more, you can download your top 5 jumpstart tips at healendometriosisnaturally.com and jump on the VIP email list. Remember to keep you number one. The world needs a healthy you.